And here we are. Welcome to the Canadian Bro Show. Very excited to be doing our 42nd episode, man. This is very exciting. My name is Paul Bale. I'm the founder and host of the Canadian Bro Show. I'm currently filming. We are live. I'm filming in Kelowna, and Johnny's filming in Vancouver. And this is my co-host of the most, to my left and your right, Mr. Johnny Leister. Mr. Johnny Leister, how are you? Briefly, what's going on in Vancouver? How's the weather?
It's beautiful. It's warm. This is our summer. They come and go very quickly, so we have to enjoy them while they last, because for our listeners who've never been to Vancouver, it pretty much rains 10 months a year. We don't suffer droughts here, that's for sure. How's the weather in Kelowna?
Yeah, it's opposite. Kelowna, a lot of people don't know, is the top end of the Sonoran Desert that starts down in the very southern tip of Mexico in Las Paz. Wow. And goes up through the middle mountain range and western side of Canada, and goes right in British Columbia, and there's parts of Alberta. And believe it or not, there's only two provinces in the world, or in Canada anyways, which is really the second largest country in the world, that has a rainforest and a desert, and that's British Columbia and Saskatchewan. A lot of people don't know that, but in British Columbia, it's because of the Sonoran Desert, and Kelowna, I'm in the Okanagan Valley, and it's desert-like heat, and it's hot. It's 30 degrees. It's dry heat. It's beautiful. It's lake time, 100-mile lake. But thanks for asking. I just want to welcome everybody to our show. And if you've never been, at the Canadian Bro Show on YouTube, this is our podcast. We've been, I think we've got about 63, 64. Altogether, I've been a YouTube sort of founder and host on and off. I've got 73 videos in total over the last 7 years or whatever. But I founded Canadian Bro Show about 15 years ago in my mind. And I wanted to create, and it just took me 15 years to get to this part. So interestingly enough, Johnny and I were talking about what our show is going to be, and it's this show here on the ticker below. Meet the Bros Behind the Mic. Founder, creator, host Paul Bale, and co-host Johnny Leister. Unfiltered, unedited takes with Canadian charm and serious laughs every episode. New episode 42, All things Canadian with Pauly and Johnny. My co-host, Johnny Leister's YouTube channel, and he also has a Facebook channel, a writing Facebook channel, because Johnny's a professional writer in Johnny's way. So please check him out. He's prolific, and he's got some serious talent. And if you enjoy the content of our show, please subscribe, like, share, comment. And the Canadian Real Estate, my websites. I am working on the third iteration of the Canadian Bro Show, and a new logo that's coming up at the end of this ticker as well. And the new logo is going to be very cool. Yeah, we're trying to make it a little bit more concise, a little more professional. We film live in Vancouver and Kelowna, but the show won't be on until probably the next 5, 6, 7 days. And when it does, then it will be live. But it's not live. We film nonstop. We're unedited. We're unscripted. And it's just, and if you're wondering, how do these guys do it? Who the heck are these guys? I wrote down a little something. I'm a writer as well, but Johnny's the real writer. But because I'm trying to create this show and trying to evolve, and anybody's curious, and you're still watching, if you're curious, and I hope you are, meet the bros behind the mic. Ever wonder who's behind the laughs, the rants, and the unapologetic real talk of the Canadian Bro Show? Let's break it down. Paul Bale, founder, creator, and host. He's the guy that started it all. The brains, the voice, the visionary behind the Canadian Bro Show, whether he's dropping truth F-bombs or spinning hilarious
God's gift to women. And he's my guy anyway.
That was the old days. Paul brings a unique blend of depth, humor, and nonstop, no bullshit commentary. He built the platform from the ground up, and he's steering the ship with style, smarts, and serious bro energy. And that's why he brought on the co-host with the most, Johnny Leister, the chaos coordinator, the perfect counterbalance to Paul's fire. Johnny brings the off-the-cuff charm and razor-sharp Canadian wit,
Yeah.
That keeps things real and unpredictable, as he is sometimes. He is our co-host, your wild card, and the guy that always knows how to stir the pot in the best possible way. Take off.
We're a synergetic symphony of wit, charisma, and pithy and uplifting philosophy in
And
our minds. That might be a minority opinion, but two is better than zero.
Johnny, I love the way you finished it off. But before Johnny, great interjection, great tangent, and relevant. But my whole writing point was to talk about me and Johnny, and then talk about it together. Together, they're not just a duo; they're a vibe, a full-blown, unapologetic, keep it real Canadian broadcast experience. Expect raw convos, plenty of sometimes rude and crude, but a lot of laughter, bold opinions for sure, and plenty of moments that have you laughing, thinking, or simply yelling back at your own headphones. Who are these guys? We are the Canadian Bro Show on YouTube, and we are the fastest growing only Canadian. We try to do a very large percentage of our show, and today we want to talk about who the heck are we, Johnny? And how did you become a part of this show? Like, what happened?
You invited me, and I accepted, and I'll always be grateful for that because I love doing it.
So let's share with people a little bit about us.
Sure. Okay, I'd like to start if you don't mind.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Ask you, let's start things off with a bang. Something really important. I want to ask you about your philosophical or / religious belief, which is Buddhism. How did this begin? What led you to it? And how do you define Buddhism? And how does it work for you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't feel comfortable about talking about their spiritual journey or their religious journey, but I'm not one of those people. So I'm quite happy to answer that concisely as I can. If anybody's interested, I love it. It's a great journey. I was raised into an Irish. The mainstay of our family was my grandfather, Cornelius Michael Pine, and my grandmother, Carlina Ann Solveson. And my grandfather was Catholic Irish from Winnipeg, and before that, County Clare in Ireland. And my grandmother, Solveson, was also from Winnipeg, but of Icelandic, from the Solveson clan, going back generations and generations. And they found themselves, and they were Catholics, and they were, Roman Catholic, Canadian. They weren't Protestant, let's put it that way, where everybody else was. And so I grew up in Catholicism. I was baptized. I don't remember baptism, of course, but I do remember my communion. And I went to St. Augustine's from grade 1 to grade 6 in the early 70s and followed Catholicism. And really, really enjoyed it at that age. I think it was the best time for me to get into it because I was raw, unfiltered, and much like our show is. And I was learning, and I was exploring, and the journey, and the moment, the second. And I found going to church on Fridays, they would cut us off after lunch at 1:00, and we're done. We just go to the church for as long as we want to be, from 1 to 3. And I found myself going there and really getting into it and enjoying the austere coldness and beauty of the architecture and the lights coming through, and then the quietness. And then if I really felt I needed to talk to someone, I talked to one of the priests and just let her go. And I ended up being a choir boy, and I ended up singing the psalm. The Catholic Church is not like the gospel church. You don't sing. They allowed me at about 10 years old to sing the psalm on Sundays and Saturdays, which is pretty incredible.
That sounds like an amazing experience.
It was really cool, and I wasn't nervous at all. It was really, had this really angelic young 10-year-old boy, and I'm sure I'm so glad the priest didn't do anything they shouldn't have done or tried to, because that they would have messed with the wrong 10-year-old. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So I went through and I grew, and then I saw some really ugly things in grade 1 when I went to St. Augustine's, and I saw an extremely drunk priest just hammered, struggling down St. Augustine's hallway, and then that and the nurse whipping me in front of the grade 1 class with a cane
Oh my
on my
God.
butt.
Oh,
I just kind of saw the ugly side
yeah.
of Catholicism when I was at a very young and impressionable age. And as I grew up, I started to read voraciously. Johnny and I, we both talk about reading and writing and novels and education, and we both are prolific writers, and Johnny more so, and readers. I'm reading 2 books right now, and I've got 4 books. I'm ready. I'm on the go, and I'm into 2. But and getting back to your question, I read a book on Taoism and the art of war, a separate book on the art of war, and then Taoism, and then I fell in love with Bruce Lee in 1975, and I started following Asian philosophies, and I got into kung fu and martial arts, and I started to get curious about Buddhism because they were excommunicated from China and Tibet, and then I saw the old Buddha, like when I was really young, not the current one who I love, the main dude. And I just started following them, and I started reading up on the education and literature, and it was so beautiful. It was all from the heart, the soul. It was about a life going on forever. It was about kindness and generosity, and following the white light of love and living a certain way.
Do you find Buddhism to be like less dogmatic or not so strict, not so restrictive? Is that why it's a better fit for you, do you feel?
Most definitely dogmatic, for sure. And the freedom of evolution of the soul, spirit, and mind is every human being has its own journey. And it's allowed me to take my own journey and explore. And the exploration's been extraordinary in my life. Thank God.
Great answer. Very heartfelt.
True story.
Thank you for sharing. Do you want to ask me something, or do you want me to ask you another question?
No, I mean, my God, I'm ready to get a massage or something. I was like, wow. No, I'd like to. Well, I mean, this is the story is about getting to know the Bro Show, and so as I've known Johnny for over 50 years, and we've been friends for the vast majority of it, fairly close. But there's been periods of time where I haven't seen him, and Johnny, the Johnny I knew was a beautiful, young, happy-go-lucky, kind of goofy kid, and yeah, but he had this blonde hair, and he was a big kid, and he's super friendly, and he lived a block from me. So I met him in 1973, and that Johnny then and this Johnny now are not the same people. Thank God. Yeah. I'm largely not the same person I was when I was a kid, although I was a really good kid. I'm probably a better kid than I was a human being. I don't know.
Yeah.
But my question would be to Johnny is, in the 52 years I've known you, the most pivotal point of your life, do you remember it clearly and concisely?
Absolutely.
And when it happened and how it happened, and explain to us what happened to you that
okay,
moment.
Well, this will sound like a broken record to you, Paul, because you've heard this a million times before, but I'll try to make it as concise as possible.
Don't worry about it.
When I was 53 in 2019, I came home from work one day.
And you're how old now?
I'm 59 now. I'm going to be 60 next month.
So 6 years ago.
Yeah. And I just hit a wall of where I felt saturated by the way I was living my life as a couch potato and watching DVDs every night. I used to weigh 235 to 250 pounds. I was just eating. It's a wonder I'm still alive. It's a wonder I don't have type 2 diabetes or heart disease, because I was eating KFC and pizza virtually every night, Snickers bars, and just the worst, most atrocious diet you could imagine. And I was depressed, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And I remember sitting in my apartment, and I kind of looked up at my ceiling, and I said, "Hello, God. You know, dude, super dude. I've heard about you,
bro.
Supreme dude. God has a sense of humor. I've heard about you my whole life. I've always been an open-minded agnostic. I never really wanted to be pinned down to one particular train of thought with regards to the quote-unquote afterlife or religion or metaphysics. But I said to you, I know that I could do better. I need your help. And the Bible says, ask and you shall receive. And what I received from God was unbridled, unconditional love. And it kind of ties into the few months that I spent in cognitive therapy. A few years before that, I was in therapy, and I had a great therapist. He said to me that we have to like ourselves unconditionally.
Yeah,
In other
absolutely.
words, if you say to yourself, I'll like myself if I have $1 million, you might get the $1 million, which is great, but you also might lose the $1 million. So what then? Are you going to go back to not liking yourself? That's a lousy way to live your life, flip-flopping emotionally, because it's draining. It
Yeah.
drains your energy, and we need energy to do whatever it is we want to do with our lives.
Yeah.
So once I became a believer in God, once I took this leap of faith, a funny thing happened. I wouldn't say it was instantaneous, but not very long period of time, maybe a few days or a few weeks, I began to evolve into the John Leister of my mind's eye. I lost 65 pounds. I started writing like crazy. I dusted off these short stories that I'd written many years before. Thank God I made hard copies. And that was the beginning of my journey of becoming a self-published author. And so that was the day that really changed my life. That's why you're doing this podcast with me and not somebody else. Because once I accepted God, it's not like I never felt loved before. I know my parents loved me. I had friends like you who loved me, and I never doubted that. But I never, okay, you referred to earlier the time that you and I did not see each other for many years, is because I did not feel worthy of your friendship. I did not feel worthy of another person's love. And the psoriasis was another added factor to that. So I essentially cocooned myself into this, almost like the boy in the plastic bubble, that John Travolta movie from the 1970s, where I would just go to work and I'd come home with my stack of DVDs and my pizza and my KFC, and occasionally here and there, like I did kickboxing for a couple of years, or I read a self-help book like Awaken the Giant Within by Anthony Robbins. I tried to fill my head with as much positive information as I could, but it did not take in a meaningful way until I took that leap of faith. Now, if I'm wrong about God, if it turns out that the atheists and the agnostics of the world are right, they're not, but that's fine. I'm just saying, I'm trying to cover all the bases here. But let's say that hypothetically that they're right. Our Heavenly Father, please forgive me. Just let's say that they're right. It doesn't matter, because this mindset works for me. That's why I'm a self-published author. That's why I'm doing this podcast right now, and the Facebook group page, and I'm exactly who I want to be right now, and better late than ever, and better now than ever. And thankfully, I took this leap of faith at a time in my life where I'm still relatively healthy. I'm actually healthier now than I ever have been, and it still has some cognitive ability, because at a certain point, it is too late.
Well, that was wonderful, and unfiltered, raw, pure truth coming from co-host of the most, Johnny Leister. It was incredible.
And it never lie.
Well, I mean, so that's a wonderful answer. Your turn, my friend.
Okay. No, we've talked about this before, but I think it's worth talking about it again. When did you realize that you wanted to become a professional basketball player? What was that? Do you remember that specific day?
God, there's probably so many times I thought about it. But the earliest...
When you saw a game on TV for the first time when you were a child,
yeah,
you're like, this is what I want to do. This is my bliss.
You know, I didn't even know who I was at 4 years old. My first time I remember watching a basketball game. And I'll tell you that first day. It was a morning. I don't know what day it was, because when you're a kid, every day is Saturday and Sunday. But I do know where I was living. And that was in West Point Grey on, I believe, 10th and Trimble. West Point Grey is a beautiful neighborhood, very exclusive.
Fun. Yeah.
But this was back in the 60s when I was 4 years old. So I was.
You know who lived there? David Duchovny.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do. I know a lot of people do. I got clients that live there. I got friends that live there. I mean, they're all. Yeah, you gotta be. It's just a beautiful place, man. The whole peninsula is University of British Columbia on the west side of Vancouver, which is basically west of Main Street, for those that know Vancouver. But anyways, getting back to your question, because it's a good question, and I remember it so clear, it's unreal. I was in my bed, and I couldn't sleep, and I crawled out of my bed, like I climbed out, like climbing a little mountain, because, you know, I was tiny. But I had the system down. I knew if I got up early in the morning, I'd get the TV on. And my great-grandmother gave us her old TV, and it was one of those ginormous, like the TV was like a black walnut.
And the screen is this big, right?
I'm telling you, with like 3 knobs and 2 channels or 3 channels, I think, back then. It was real. I think, honestly, I think it was ABC, NBC, and CBS,
And powered by Dodo Bird.
and KTSC. You know, we had the Seattle channel as well, which, thank goodness, great programs on that.
Yeah.
And then we had the local channel, CTV, came later, but this is 1969. So I turned on the TV. I knew how to do that. I knew how to turn a knob on. I was 4 years old, and I was walking, and I got some milk, and with a bowl of cereal, and I turned the knob on, and it was on ABC, and I think ABC on those channels back then was channel 4.
Oh yeah, I remember all too well.
Right, and then boom, and it was like black and white, of course. And it wasn't the best image, but it was so cool to be able to turn a knob. And, you know, I'm 4 year old, and I got a thing of milk. I got cereal. I'm like living the dream over here, bro. But I didn't know it. And so it was the start of the opening of the 1969-70 NBA season. And in black and white at Madison Square Garden, where the Knickerbockers, the New York Knicks, one of my favorite teams, plays, they were going to do a live game on a Saturday. It must have been a morning, must have been a weekend morning, because it was like a 10 o'clock game. And they only do matinees in the NBA on the weekend games, on occasion, not all the time. And it was the New York Knickerbockers, and I can't remember the other team. I didn't care. I sat there with my mouth open and watched the whole thing, and I was like, oh, this is cool. What is this? And it's not the first time where I knew, because I wasn't cognizant of who I was or where I was going. All I knew is that whatever this is, I like how it's played. I like the movement. I like the fast paced. I like the fact that all these guys are huge. And I'm like nothing. I'm like 50 pounds wet if I'm lucky. At 4 years old, probably less. And I just fell in love with basketball at 4 years old. And I think that, you know, I played professional basketball 25 years ago. Here I am at 60 years old, and I've come full circle on my basketball journey.
How's the referee now?
I'm a paid referee with the Kelowna Officials of British Columbia Association of Referees. I referee basketball games. And the 10-acre park across the street, I'm looking at it right now, it's finished, and there's a brand new basketball court on there. So it's like, I am extremely blessed, humbled, and grateful that the journey has taken me to this point right now.
You must get a great workout running up and down the court refereeing. I can just see you sweating and huffing and puffing like a madman.
and then learning how to walk the next 2 days.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you have to deal with angry parents?
There are angry coaches, there's angry players, there's angry parents. There's a lot of angry people out there.
Do players run up to you and swear at you?
Not swear. No, because I'm the type of referee that I won't tech you up right away. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But as soon as you piss me off, and I'll tee you up instantly. And if you do it, I'll kick.
What does that mean? I'll tee you up.
I'll give you a technical.
Oh,
so I'll give you one technical. They get foul shots and possession.
Is that like a warning?
Yeah. No, the warning is I'll tell them once before that that's probably not the best way to talk to another human being, let alone me. Okay? It's time to grow up and learn.
There you go.
Yeah, so.
That's awesome.
But anyways.
Okay.
So now back to you.
Yeah.
Oh, man, Johnny. I mean, honestly, now I have to go back to your work ethic. Because one of the things I found in life is I've had a very, very strong work ethic in many different types of careers and trades, and it's always been the same.
Off the charts. Bro.
Sorry?
Your work ethic is off the charts.
Yeah, it's kind of insatiable. I get taken over by the need to work out all the time. And I just felt that was the only way that I could get better. And it worked. But the same question goes to you. When did you, I'll let you tell people briefly in your answer about how many novels you've written, but when did you know? Same question to Johnny. When did you open a comic book one day? Did you watch, a television Rockford Files one day? Did you read a book from the library when you used to work there, and you were let go 3 months later for a reason that you still don't know to this day? It was probably you ate the free popcorn that everybody was supposed to donate. I don't know.
Maybe
But
that was.
when did it all start for you, Johnny? You've been a writer for the better part of 50 years of your life.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that your passion for basketball, this is a very esoteric concept for some people, but I believe that there's some aspects of ourselves that are sort of preordained. In other words, I think that your passion for basketball is what came with your spirit, whereas my passion for writing and for stories, particularly stories about heroes, very strong, moral men that I can look up, and women too, but I prefer stories where the main character is male. I guess that makes me a sexist, but that's just what I like. I can remember reading comic books as a boy. I had a huge collection, and I remember imagining written by John Leister, art by John Leister. I remember having that in my mind's eye when I was a child, and I wanted to be a comic book artist. I drew every day, and I was getting better and better at it. I don't know what happened. I gave up on it. And over the years, I've made these sort of half-hearted, sporadic attempts at writing. I wrote a couple of screenplays in my 20s. They're not very good. I read these books on how to write screenplays where they try to break everything down into a formula. Quentin Tarantino, one of my all-time favorite writers, he's never read any of those books. He just watched a million movies.
But you didn't know who Tarantino was, so
Yeah.
when did you have an ephany when you were young?
Well, my first real writing explosion came when I was working at a job site around, I want to say 2005, where literally I was just pushing a button all day. It was a data center, and I was letting trucks into this building, and the truck driver would show me the ID, and I would push a button, and the gate would open, and like literally that was my job. I would do a little patrolling here and there, like the slackest job you could ever imagine to actually get paid for. And so I always like to read, but I just started writing these short stories for my own amusement more than anything else. I wasn't even thinking about self-publishing. Now, one of my all-time favorite writers is Robert B. Parker, the creator character called Spencer. Remember that show Spencer for Hire with Robert Urich?
Yes, I do.
Right? Based on a series of books. And I read these books about a private detective, told from a first-person narrative. And I remember thinking, I think I can do this. And that's, when you have that thought, like how you talk about basketball, when you have that thought, you got to act on it right away. Because if you don't, if you procrastinate, then that will become your habit as opposed to actually doing it.
Yeah,
so
good point.
I just cranked out these short stories for my own amusement more than anything else. And as I said earlier, once I reached out to God and asked him to help me, I dusted them off. Now, you're also a writer. It's very hard to be objective about your own stuff. But I read these stories like literally 10 years after I'd written them, and I barely remembered writing some of them. I remember thinking, if these were written by somebody else, like Joe Blow, I know I would like them. Like, I know this is not the worst stuff. I know there's stuff out there that's a lot worse than what this is. So that was the beginning of my true life's journey. Cool. And all the time that I spent in therapy and reading all of these self-help books, Deepak Chopra and Stuart Wilde was another one, Wayne Dyer. I mean, I started like actually implementing that stuff on a consistent basis. And that is the key to a happy life, in my opinion. And Anthony Robbins talked about all the time. You can't just feel good about yourself once in a while. You can't just go for your dream once in a while. That's not how a person succeeds. You have to do it every day, no matter how busy you are. If you're married, you have 5 kids, and you have 10 jobs, and you want to be a pilot, then you'd better set aside at least 10 minutes a day to focusing on that goal of getting your pilot's license. This isn't as a specific example, because if you don't, you will suffer inside. And every other aspect of your life might be great. You might have a great relationship, a great career, you might be healthy, but if you have that little woodpecker in your brain, think, gosh, I really want to write a book. I really want to do a podcast.
Yeah.
When I started making these changes in my life, you can cut me off at any point, so I filibuster. I reached out to so many people. It's like, hey, let's do a podcast. I must have reached out to, including.
Okay, we're going for a commercial break at any second. We have I have a signed Kobe Bryant. Just 2 weeks after the helicopter crashed. It's for sale over my right shoulder. So Johnny, thanks for that.
So that's my answer. I guess I'm done.
No, I mean, Canadian charm and serious laughs. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's and we could go on at the same time. Time is money.
You're right.
And at our age, it's one of the best commodities that we have to leverage.
I'll just wrap this up with one more thing, and then I'll ask you the next question. I just want to
Oh,
put
please.
a bow on.
Please do. Please do.
All of those people said exactly the same thing. They said, "Oh, I'm too." They'll made all kinds of excuses. They all wanted to do it. They all like the idea, but they're scared, and that's why we don't do. That's the only reason. Never mind all this other stuff. It's fear that drags us down. Okay.
And
I want to ask you, Pauly.
just before you do that, I just wanted to interject.
Please.
One of the philosophies at the Canadian Bro Show is we simply will not do any content that is fear-based.
No.
I'll just leave it at that. Next question, please, Johnny.
Fear is the mind killer. That is a quote from Frank Herbert's Dune. Okay.
I love that.
I want to ask you, Paul. Paul and I grew up at Kids High School from 1978 to 1983. Pauly, my brother, what was your best day at Kids High School?
My best date or my best day?
Well, you can talk about that too, but I'm talking your best day. What was the day where you came home from school and you just felt like you were on top of the world? Can you think of one specific moment where you just felt like, I'm Paul Bale and I don't want to be anybody else, and it's a good thing?
Yeah, I don't even know if I should share this.
Well, we can move on to something else if you can't think of anything.
No, I mean,
Share.
I lost my virginity rather subtle and
At
quickly.
School? A kid?
Not at school.
Oh my goodness.
I won't tell you what age it was. I won't mention to the person, but I will tell you about the experience. It was wonderful.
Oh gosh.
It was probably the best experience I had that day, certainly that week, and definitely that year. In fact, probably one of the best experiences I've had in my entire life. Even better than watching the Knickerbockers win the championship on that old television when I was 4 years old, because they did win the championship 1971 and 69-70 and then 71-72. But getting back to the question, there was this very attractive, tall brunette that went to a different school than Kits. And it was a school where everybody went to the preschool before going to the high school. Some people went to Kids, some people went to PW, some people went to Bing, some people went to U Hill, whatever, Hamber, whatever. But everybody, it was cool, went to Kids. Come on. And so this gal would come during lunchtime because she could just run over. She would literally run from 16th and in Mackenzie Heights, where PW was, Prince of Wales, and run during lunch hour just to meet me and perhaps others that she had on her wish list, so to speak. And she came right when we were playing basketball at lunch, and when I was just finishing, and she came right up to me, and she was just slightly sweaty because she just run like 5 blocks in probably 5 minutes. And she was athletic, and she was athletic and really beautiful, and I was just really young, and she, the way she looked at me, I was like, my God, I don't think anybody's looked at me like that forever. And so a very short time later, this is a true story. Very short time later, I pulled out my what I thought would be the perfect album. Because I had vinyl back then, right? I had a really nice stereo setup. I had a Pioneer, and I had Wharfdale speakers, and I had lots of vinyl, and it sounded good. I knew it, and I pulled out Led Zeppelin 4, and the B-side, I think, is the last song, "Stairway to Heaven," is like 24 minutes, 25 minutes, and it's, for me, it was one of the best songs of my life. And a short time thereafter, I had the most amazing experience, and from the start of the song before Stairway to Heaven until the end, that was when I became a young man.
Wow. True story. Talk about a rite of passage.
I've never told that story before. It's a true
story.
Story.
That's the first time I'm hearing this from you.
I tried to do it delicately without being rude. And,
you're pretty classy. What do you know what has become of this young lady since that?
I am still. I see her on social media occasionally. Yes. Okay.
Is this someone I know?
Maybe. Okay. I mean, we all knew each other, but probably not. Her school whatever the preschool is. I can't remember the name of it for Prince of Wales. It's about as far as Henry Hudson, as you could imagine. But anyways,
Great
who's
answer.
next?
You're up. You want to ask me something?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so here we are. We're doing this show. I hope we do this show for a long time. If there was any one wish that you could manifest and you could make it happen with, in our last episode was wands and fantasy. It's going to be up in the next couple of days. Great episode, so please watch it. But if you had a wand, Johnny, and you had one wish or a genie in a bottle from, our favorite show that we used to watch on TV.
Barbara Eden.
She was easy on the eyes, if I remember correctly. Great show. And also Bewitched. Right? The other one.
Sam!
Right? If you had that one wish and a genie in the bottle, what would that one wish... You're 59 years old now?
Yeah.
What would that one wish... Right now, one wish.
I think I can give you a fairly concise and concrete answer, which is unusual for me.
Kind of why I asked you.
My ultimate dream is that my creativity... Shut up. My creativity...
That was from love. That was from the kindness of the white light of love, bro. Come on.
Suddenly Paul becomes Pinocchio. No, I'm just kidding. No, my ultimate wish for my personal life...
Dude, this little ski slope nose hasn't changed for a long time. You know what I'm saying? No Pinocchio here.
I would wish that my creativity was my main source of income. I love my job. I love my coworkers. And if any of them are watching this podcast, love y'all. It really is an incredible occupation because it's so physically demanding. But it's my bread and butter job. It's a means to an end. My wish would be that they're enough, that I connect with that one person out there, man or woman, who has the power, who has the connections, who has the money to make a Lee Hacklin private investigator streaming series on Netflix or Hulu or any other platform. Look, my stories are not great literature. I'll be the first one to admit it. But I like to think I'm cocky enough to say that my stories are not boring. People can criticize them however they like. They're fun, they're entertaining. I always make myself laugh. And I believe that they're absolutely good enough for media adaptation. So that I don't think about being super wealthy. I don't even think about owning a car. I don't need to.
So what you're saying, if you had that wand or that genie, you would like to be a published author and have your next book just take off.
I want to connect with that one person who can connect me with my audience, because I know that there's an audience out there who are hungry for these kinds of stories that are not woke, they're not politically correct. They're not trying to preach a very specific, narrow...
No, not at all. You don't need to go on a micro rant. I'll just pick up what he's saying.
A macro rant.
No, I'm serious. It was ready to slip into the hole a little bit.
That's my answer. Yeah.
I mean, well, I just got to say, and thank you for that. This whole thing about interviewing each other is about being honest and blunt, and sometimes sharing truths that you've never shared, and there's nothing wrong with that. And this is the type of avenue. This is not a children's show. We're adults. We talk about adult things for the most part, and we certainly do care about. We do care about. We were all children, and Johnny and I, when we first met, we were children. Kind of geeky, comic book, movie watching, reading books. Except I was an athlete and he wasn't. That was the only difference.
No.
I
was a quasi-competent tennis player. My dad taught me how to play tennis. I could play tennis and not look like a total spaz.
Yeah.
Unlike every other sport. Okay, no. Paul, you're up. I want to ask you, Mr. Paul Bale.
Oh boy.
You and I have worked in the service and security service industry are pretty much overlapping. Hospitality industries for many years. What is your favorite aspect of the hospitality industry? And if you had a magic wand, what would you change today about the hospitality industry?
Very interesting. Yeah, great question. Wow.
Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, I didn't expect that. Hospitality industry, yes. Yeah, I'll give you the short, concise, informative, educational, truthful version. My mom cut my allowance off because she felt I was being selfish and lazy and not doing dishes and taking out the garbage or cleaning my room or doing all the other things that she wanted me to do. I just wasn't succeeding in her eyes. So she cut my $1 a week or whatever it was, which was a substantial amount of money back in, 1974.
Like 4 comic books.
Dude, I would buy one, and that's when I bought my first Star Wars 1. And then I bought a Slurpee, and I saved the rest of it to buy another Slurpee later. And then when I was short on change, I had to admit that Ryan Cadman, rest in peace, our good friend, one of my best old friends at Balfour Rentals, passed yesterday. And rest in peace, Ryan. Love you. We would go to 7-Eleven down the alley at Balfour's, and because we didn't have any money, we were 38 cents short or something, and the guys at the 7-Eleven never gave us a break. So we try to get pop bottles and stuff, and it didn't happen. So we have to admit that we stole some, 2 dozen mini chocolate donut package, and they caught us and chased us out, but it didn't stop us. We just kept running because, what are they going to do? Run across 4th Avenue? This is 4th and U and chase us down into Balfour's. They'd never catch us.
I remember that 7-Eleven.
Yeah. So when the allowance went, I was like, oh my God. How am I going to get Slurpees? How am I going to get donuts? I can't steal for a living. I'm terrible.
No, don't do that.
And so I got a job, and the first job was this basically taught me to work at a very young age. And I got my neighbor Daryl Clan had the paper shack a block and a half down from Balfour Rentals in the alley.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, just off between you and Cypress.
Oh gosh, remember.
Oh my God! And my grandmother and my uncle Stefan owned a vitamin store right in front of the paper shack. Right, so we had a vitamin store there. We had a business, a family business, and so I went. I said, Daryl, look, man, my mom cut my allowance. I need to work. And he goes, you really want to be? You said you hate it. I said, yeah, well, I don't, but I need the money. So he goes, well, can you start today? And I'm like, seriously? Yeah. He goes, I got a route that's right on your house.
Perfect.
And boom, I was delivering papers I get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning,
Wow.
do my paper route, go to the paper shack, get my stuff, deliver the paper route, and then hop my bike and go to Kits and do my morning workouts like I always did at high school, right? I always worked out before school started. And that's how I became a professional basketball player eventually, I suppose. And, I think I'm losing track of the question, but my work ethic. And then the next job was my mom was the manager at a restaurant called Tuesdays. I don't know if you remember Tuesdays. There was a Tuesdays downtown. There's one in Kerrisdale on Boulevard, and there's one on Broadway, where the Van City is right now. And so she said, "Look, we need a dishwasher, and you got to start tomorrow." And I was like, "Oh, fuck, dishwashing, man? Are you serious?"
I did that job for a week. It's the hardest job.
It's the worst job. And these
It's
guys,
absolutely worst.
their dishwasher would leave at like 9 o'clock and then leave everything from 9 o'clock till 3 because everybody's drinking and partying when they close. And you know how restaurants are back in the day. And maybe a lot of them are today. I don't know. So she gave me the key, and she's the manager. My mom's a manager, and I'm like, she knew I was struggling. I was like, I need money, man. I drink a lot of Slurpees. I need donuts. I need vinyl. If my purple light goes out from so much use, I need a new purple light. So I get on the bus and I go up. She gave me the key. I set the untrigger the alarm, clean up. The dish pile was an absolute mess. I've never seen so much shit in my life. It was just disgusting. And so I'd clean that crap up and I just give her, right? I just go into overdrive and just give her. And then the chef would come in, and his name was Wolfgang. He was Swiss. And he just loved to drink. It was his favorite thing in the world. He just drank all the time, all day. And he'd come in and he saw the place the night before, if he remembers. He was probably hammered by the time he left. And then he saw how clean it was. He was like, "This kid's for real. You're Carol Ann's son, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And plus, Kevin Lux from the Lux family worked in the kitchen. Kevin, they were from OLPH and so on. I know this answer is a little convoluted. It's a true story. And then Wolfgang came, and he was hammered. He was obviously hungover, and he didn't want to do his Mise en Place. So he taught me how to do Mise en Place, and he gave me cash.
Cool.
And I had to vacuum in the front of the house. And that's really where it snowballed all from. My work ethic started from my mom cutting my allowance off. And I've worked my entire life from 7 to 60.
Wow. So what's the one thing that you'd like to see, you'd like to change
in the hospitality industry, which is broad? And the hospitality, the hospitality industry is not quite the retail industry where it's a retail apocalypse. It's terrible, but the hospitality industry with tipping and the structure and the cost of making a meal and keeping good qualified people is I would make it. If I opened a restaurant, I would make it a co-op, and I'd own the property before first opening a restaurant. Before even I'd own freehold the entire property, the building. It's the only way I'd do it. But what I would do is make a cooperative, and I would offer people a share of the property for their position. And that share would be earmarked on that particular position. Obviously, the general manager, excuse me, if it wasn't me, which it wouldn't be because I'm running the whole show, I need to be, and I've done everything in the hospitality, back and front of the house, everything. And I would make it cooperative because now you can't sustain and maintain quality workers because you can't afford to. And they can get a construction job in Vancouver, $35 an hour, and never swung a hammer in their life. So I would offer shares to my general manager and sign him on a contract like a professional athlete.
Wow, that's very innovative.
And that's what I do. And I do that for the whole place. And
So
cut everyone in and make it incentivize these hardworking people. People have no idea what goes on in the back of a kitchen, in the front of a house when it's busy. They have no idea.
Yeah, it's chaos.
Well, not unless you do it well.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah. So I would clean that crap up and take care of people and give them equal opportunity.
Okay. I find if there's one thing that I could change is I would just like to see like people working in the service industry. I would like to see them be a little more mindful. Like it's getting into pet peeve territory a little, like at Starbucks. You know when you buy a spinach wrap at Starbucks, I actually had to ask them to stop doing this. They put the sticky gluey piece of paper on the plate that you're about to eat off of.
Yeah, I know.
And when I explained to them, the manager,
nobody cares, Johnny. Don't bother explaining. You'll just be you'll be ostracized. They won't even serve you.
They look at me like I'm an alien.
Well, you are, and you're an alien they don't want to talk to. And at the end of the day, one of the other problems in the service industry, because you said this and everyone's saying it is they hate their jobs. They're bored out of their freaking heads, and they just raise the wage to $18 an hour. Look, try to live on $18 an hour anywhere in Western Canada, and unless you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or you're living in the basement of your parents' house, or the basement of your house because you can't afford and you've rented 2/3 of your house out just to pay the mortgage, is at the end of the day, the hospitality industry is really struggling, and there's bankrupts everywhere, and the retail is the same thing. So you got to be creative in business, and you got to take care of people. Otherwise, you're not in business, or you're going to have a business run by robots, which seems to be happening.
Oh yeah, I mean technology is taking over.
AI is going to take over. They'll get rid of servers, and it will be like the Jetsons, where they just open their door at the booth and the food's delivered.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Progress, regress at the same time.
Wow.
Do you have another question for me, Paul?
I'll have one more question at the timing here. At this point, 59. I know Johnny really well. Do you find, with all of your discipline and having the same career for the better part of 30, almost 40 years, and disciplined and organized, and you've had an epiphany and you've grown, is there light at the end of the tunnel? Is that sunshine always going to be with you? Yeah. And what is next for you? How do you take this to the next level? What can you do to continue to manifest the dreams that you've set out in the last 6 years?
We had a guest on our show recently, Bobby Nash,
Yep.
who's a professional writer,
Yep.
super prolific, and a great guy.
Yep.
And I see pictures of him on Facebook almost every day. He's traveling around the U.S., and he's at conventions, and he's got the table set up with all the books, and he's selling books, and he's signing autographs, and he's traveling. That's the goal. He's living the dream that I have in my mind's eye. That's how I want to live my life. I want to be a George Lucas. I want to be a Todd McFarlane. I want my whole life to be about this character, Lee Hackland, not just the Netflix series. I'm talking merchandise. I'm talking the whole shebang. I mean, I want to take this on the road, but I have to work. I'm not good at saving money. And at the end of the day, I need to. That's something I need to work upon myself. I need to save money because I'm just not very frugal that way. But that's the goal that I have in my mind's eye. I look at Bobby Nash, and he's one of my like you yourself. Not to be overly sycophantic, but he's living the life that I feel that I'm moving towards. So yes, the sun will always be shining. I still have my off days like everyone else, and I want to ask you about that actually. Actually, I want to ask you. Maybe this is my last question for you. When you're having a lousy day, when things don't go the way you want them to, we all lose our minds sometimes over things that are ultimately trivial. What is your default position? Where is that place you can go to in your mind that centers you when you're feeling stress and or anxiety about whatever?
That's a good question. That's a good question for all of us, actually, Johnny. But everyone's got a different answer, right?
Mm.
And my answer would be very, very simple. I am. We started off talking about religion and spirituality and so on, and I'm not so much a religious person anymore because of my love of Buddhism and good things. And that is not my first place because that's the first place I start my day every day. But the place that I really find sanctuary in moments of turmoil and stress is working out. I get on my mountain bike and I go for 10, 12K a burn. And I go into the green and I go to the park across the street. I got a brand new 10-acre park here. I start my bike ride there and I go through the creeks and the mountains, and then there's 24 beaches along Lakeshore. And no matter how bad it is, and it can get bad, it can get worse or not so, that 45 minutes, I come home and do calisthenics and have a shower and my power shake and my vitamins. What I just said keeps everything together.
Right. Great answer.
For me.
Right. That's a good routine.
100%.
That's awesome. For me, whenever I'm having a bad day, I just tell myself, this is part of the journey. This is the part of the journey that sucks. When you're in the middle of it, it can suck. But for a quote unquote audience, if you're watching a movie, nothing bad ever happens to the hero, it'll be a pretty boring movie. And my audience is God. And it's like when I started posting that first book the first time, I kept going in circles. Amazon was rejecting my banking information. If I didn't have God in my life, I would have given up after 2 or 3 tries. So that's my default position when I'm having a lousy day. It's like, is God going to be proud of me if I crawl under a blanket and start sucking on my thumb and lying in the fetal position? No, he's going to be ashamed of me. And I see God as my ultimate father figure, and I want him to be proud of me. So
that's a great answer. And by the way, we all did that as kids, and we just grew up at the point. It doesn't work after a while, right? You look like you're just feeble and you're alone, and say, help me. No, help yourself. Get out of bed and get your shit together. And
don't be a victim.
No, my goodness, no. And the other thing about working out when I'm doing this burn, I'm actually going through my mantras and my my mantras, and I'm thinking about positivity. I'm thinking about family. I'm thinking about friends. I'm thinking about Ryan Cabin passing. I'm thinking about my old friend Alex Bolingaro passing recently, and we're at an age where all these people are. But I just want to say, this is not a down episode. This is just an episode of exploration, and some of you, and maybe not all of you, and maybe more of you, after watching this episode, will realize that we're real human beings. We're not AI generated clowns. We are the Canadian Bro Show, and this aspect of the Canadian Bro Show is all things Canadian. It's certainly at least most things Canadian with Pauly and Johnny. And the second iteration of the Canadian Bro Show, and it's on YouTube. It's a podcast at the Canadian Bro Show. Just follow the ticker. All the information's below, as it will be for every episode. This is episode 42. My name is Paul Bale. I'm the director and founder and host of the Canadian Bro Show. And this is Mr. Johnny Leister, and he's the co-host of the most, and obviously a very important person on our show. And the second iteration of our show is all basketball with the Hoop Junkies, Pauly and Rolly. My good friend Trent Rolly is out in St. Paul at some lake right now, probably drinking cold beer and eating a fresh caught trout or salmon, who knows. But this show, episode 42, meet the bros behind the mic. Founder, creator, host Paul Bale, and co-host Johnny Leister. Unfiltered, unedited takes with Canadian charm. Some serious laughs every episode, or certainly most episodes. This new episode is episode 42. Thank you very much for joining us. And this is about getting to know Pauly and Johnny. And before we leave, getting to know Pauly and Johnny revolves on a couple of things before we go. And Johnny, do you have a pun for the show?
I do. Well, I'd like to start with a book. I just picked this up at the library, The Helios Conspiracy by Jim DeFelice. I love these kind of action, adventure, conspiracy thrillers.
Yep.
And here we go with the pun. Hold on to your seats, folks. What's the difference between a well-dressed man on a bicycle and a poorly dressed man on a unicycle? A tire.
Oh my God. Absolutely brilliant. I was going to do a pun, and I found a couple of good ones, but I thought I just got into this book. I've started 2 books. And so I have a tendency to read sort of 3 books on the go and make them different genres. And I just kind of bounce from it, and I find it easier to really absorb it. And I brought this one up a few episodes ago, maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago. And it's the author is Laura Hildebrand. And it's called Unbroken, and it's a story of World War II, a story of survival, resilience, and redemption, which survival, resilience, and redemption is a lot about what Johnny and I have been talking about this episode 42.
100%.
Getting to know us, because that is essentially our journey to get to where we are. So thank you for sharing that with us. If you enjoy that, please subscribe. But in the meantime, like, share. We really appreciate it. We're trying to get to 500 subs, and it would really help. Johnny, you're going to have to start paying some of the people you're talking to. Here's the book. It's called Unbroken. And it's honestly, I read it today, and I thought about doing the episode, and I was like, wow, poignant choice for the show. In the meantime, everybody, thanks again for joining it. This is Pauly and Johnny. We're signing out. Johnny, thanks again. I'm going to be ending the broadcast, and we have a new episode coming on our fantasy, our favorite fantasy films, and it's a good one, and that's coming out on Wednesday. And today is, doesn't really matter. It's coming out in the next couple of days. In the meantime, Johnny, all the best to you.
All the best.
Keep on being real.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
And be everybody, before we go, be kind.
Oh,
it's
and
free.
We should say Happy Father's Day.
We should say Happy Father's Day. Johnny and I are both not fathers, unfortunately, but there are a lot of fathers out there that really need some love, and make sure you give that love to them. In the meantime, we'll see you next time, and at the Canadian Bro Show. Take care. Peace, love, and happiness, all.
Thank you.